keep saying no one's immune to the new earth, and that there's possibility for everyone to awaken to this higher harmony. And the truth is, I don't know. I think that it's available to everyone. And that I find it, if I can take my own personal experience, I feel like I really have to choose it. I feel like there's a choice.
Intuitive Leadership Mastery, the podcast for entrepreneurs and leaders like you who want to double profits and half stress by improving your business intuition. Learn how with your host, Michaela Light.
Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Niki Coate from Pachananda and Healing House in Cusco, Peru. And we're going to be talking about the new earth and entrepreneurial growth and joy, how you might be missing out on getting your business to grow more easily and to be more healthy and happier. Welcome, Niki.
Hi, thanks, Michaela. Thank you for inviting me to the show.
Yeah, excited to have you on here and to help all the entrepreneurs listening how they can understand this kind of unusual concept they may not have come across before. And how practically it could help them in their life and their business. For those of you who don't know Niki, she's the founder of the Pachananda School and Retreat Center and Healing House in Cusco, Peru. She's originally from, I believe, Illinois in the United States.
Yep.
And she's a Reiki master and a yoga teacher and a dance instructor and does all kinds of creative and spiritual things. She also does energy healings. And she has been studying, personal growth and philosophy and healing for many days. In her copious spare time, she is a singer and songwriter. So
thanks,
welcome.
Thank you so much.
So I think we should start with a question maybe on some of the listeners' mind is like, why is this new earth thing so important right now?
Right now, we are undergoing an unprecedented evolutionary leap on the planet. And the more that we can tune into it and consciously choose it, the more we can get on the train with it. So for both our lives and our businesses, it's a really key piece to be understanding the shift in energy in order to empower ourselves and create the lives that we're looking for.
So if we get on this train of new earth energy, what would that practically look like for someone listening?
Yeah, one of the big pieces is it's allowing us to align more deeply with our own truths. And from that place to remove the blocks. Most of them have been subconscious. Remove the blocks that have been in place that keep us from experiencing the life that we crave, experiencing the relationships that we crave, and experiencing our businesses as we desire.
What might be an example of such a block that someone listening might have?
Yeah, a lot of us have blocks around prosperity, right? A lot of us have blocks around prosperity or support or having enough, right? So I call the remedy energy is plenty and the block energy is lack. And so a lot of us have experience where we're holding ourselves back to receiving plenty in our lives and in our businesses because of these subconscious and energetic blocks that really come out of what I call the old paradigm. And we're moving into the new earth, which is the new paradigm, where we can start to receive in a more vast way. Yeah.
So how that might look for someone listening is maybe they're short of money and income in their business. Maybe they're short of time. Maybe their health isn't as good as they want it to be. They have various ways that they manifest lack in their life and business because of the patterns they haven't cleared, the blocks that are in their way.
Exactly.
And then if they align with this new earth energy, which we'll talk about exactly what you mean by that later in the show, but if they align with that, then they can have flow and ease in their business and life and, not have to struggle so much.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's like the blocks are creating these patterns, like you said, of how we show up. So when something comes up, like a potential challenge, it looks like maybe we don't have the income we were hoping for this month, or we don't have the whatever we were hoping for. And then our patterns cause us to respond to those blocks in old paradigm ways. They're ways that we don't want to be in. They don't feel good, and they aren't actually creating the abundance that we desire, right? So it comes with these steps of recognizing the blocks and then reprogramming our reactions in really simple ways. And that's the cool thing about all of this. It's very simple to start to step into the new earth. It's every day and every moment.
Yeah, and we'll go through a list of tips at the end of the show on how you practically can do this in the moment.
Yeah, beautiful.
So if someone's having this, they may be like, well, that's how business is supposed to be. I mean, every other entrepreneur I know seems to struggle with their business, have to work really long hours. They don't always get the income they want. So, isn't that normal that you're supposed to work hard and struggle?
Well, it's normal in the old paradigm, right? And what I'm bringing to the table in this idea of the new earth that so many people are also receiving, I'm definitely not alone in this, is that there's a new model that wants to come through for us that is more harmonious, that is more uplifting, is more based in joy and freedom. That the new model is that suffering's out, joy is in. Yeah, we're still going to have challenges and compression. The compression helps us expand, right? But it's our way of showing up for those pieces of those challenges. It's our way of meeting them with curiosity and enthusiasm and trust, right? So that we can really live the lives we want. So many of us, I'm an entrepreneur too, as you guys know, and so many of us are living lives that say, yeah, I'm going to do this thing this year. Maybe next year I'll get to have a longer vacation, or maybe next year I won't have to work such long hours, right? And so the idea is anchoring in these big changes now that we can be entrepreneurs, we can be successful in the way that we want to experience, and we can live the lives that we want, that we can bring in the plenty, not only in abundance and in our business, but in our lives.
It sounds very exciting. So
yeah.
Maybe you could tell us a bit more about what exactly the new earth is in your vision.
Yeah, beautiful. It is very exciting. I'm most excited about this. So I love talking about it. Yeah, the new earth is this concept that has been in indigenous wisdom traditions for millennia, and is also met by new age thinkers, right? And the idea is this, that there's a massive shift happening on the planet at this time. The Incan tradition, so that's where I live here in Cusco, where Michaela and I are, that this tradition talks about that at a certain time on the planet, there would be a new energy that arises that gives humans, this is how the Incan tradition describes it, the chance to restore harmony upon the earth. So it's a collective shift. It's a frequency of energy that is coming into humanity. And we talk about the new earth, but we're really talking about the new human. And to get that into more kind of everyday terms, it's a chance for us to wake up and create the lives that we want and to create the earth that we want, right? So all the different indigenous wisdom traditions talk about this great time. And it's been brewing for a long time. We're talking about huge cycles of time on the earth. But the exciting thing is that around the time when COVID started to shut down the earth, a massive awakening started to happen, a massive new shift in frequencies. So, and we've all been experiencing it, even if we aren't aware of it. No one is immune to this energy that is really disrupting the old paradigm within us and around us.
I think some people try to resist this new paradigm, however, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. But I noticed that some people have gone through, quotes, birthing pains in the last few years, and maybe have broken through to this new earth energy and are more in a vibration of love and joy. Yeah. And other people really resist it and have pain, physical pain, mental pain, suffering, depression, in some cases, suicide. You know, it's just been very challenging for some people.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something to recognize in this, though it's been a birth process for some, other people are still stuck in the birth canal and are being squeezed by those incredible pressures of the birth canal.
Yeah, it's a very intense time. It's
a very whose time?
Intense time. A very intense time to be alive, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. And then the other thing I think some people have in the back of the mind, they may be saying, haven't we heard this all before about the 2012 transformation and it didn't happen? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, there's no logic behind this. And so in my own experience, all I can really offer is what I feel inside of myself and what I see around me. That we have been undergoing different evolutionary steps. And who knows what actually happened in 2012? These are subtle changes, right? And so this is another subtle change, what we're experiencing right now. But what I ask people to tune into is their own experience of what's happening on the planet right now. You know, think of what's happened in your life since COVID and the pandemic started to shut down the planet. Of course, things have shifted since then. But during the last couple of years, all of us have had different challenges arise, sometimes really big challenges. All of our subconscious patterns of lack and fear have been coming to the surface. You can see it in your own lives through relationship problems, money issues. Like you said, Michaela, people going into this dark night of the soul, getting depressed, suicidal, all of this.
Dark night. It was a dark year.
Dark year. Dark, long night of the year of the soul.
Very long night.
And so
for some people,
this is how I see it as evidence that there is a massive shift that's happening right now, because it's tangible in our own lives. Everything is getting shook up. Everybody is having an experience, whether they have the context of something spiritual or not. No one is immune to what's happening on the earth. So you see it in your own life. You can probably list a dozen things that have happened in the last couple of years that have been high challenges, right? But then we see it collectively. It's not only COVID, but the race issues that came to the surface in the United States, the war, everything that's coming up is like, here's my philosophy around it, is that this frequency of the new earth is coming into our subconscious terrains and shedding light onto the things that have been limiting us, the things that have been just below the surface, the things that have been just out of sight, that have been blocking us from creating the love and abundance and joy and freedom that we want in our own lives, that we deserve and we crave, right? And also as a collective. So we're in this together, you know? So this evidence for me, when some big headline hits, everything I see as evidence that there's a purging happening on the planet. We're becoming aware of these limiting patterns inside of ourselves, inside of our loved ones, inside of the collective, in order to, as soon as you start to become aware of it, you start to become free of it. And that's where the work is. That's why it's been so challenging. It has been a challenging time. Yeah, and it certainly has. But a challenge is, like you said, it's the birthing pains. So humanity, we've been way out of line. We needed a wake-up call. And so all of these things, these little things in our personal lives and in our collective are the wake-up calls to help us step into the lives that we really, really desire.
Well, that's a wonderful perspective and reframe that, you know, because some things, particularly in the news, are particularly dire and bad, this is a clue that things are actually getting better.
Yeah.
You know, the pain from being squeezed in this birthing canal is really an indication there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we're coming out into a new birth, into a new reality. Absolutely. And we're coming out of the womb of darkness. Not there's anything wrong with being in the womb, but you know, when babies are born, they suddenly get light and sound, or louder sound, or brighter light. I mean, I believe babies do see a kind of dull light inside the womb, but they often have their eyes closed, or maybe they always do. I don't know. Haven't really studied that, but obviously it's quite a shattering moment to be born for most people. Even in a gentle birth, it's like you go from being inside this caring being connected to your lunch, breakfast, and dinner through umbilical cord, through darkness. You're listening to the heartbeat of your mother all the time, which is probably, I hope, is a soothing sound. And now you're out somewhere in this bright light, noisy, cold, right? It's warm in a womb, right? When you're outside, you have to wear clothing if you want to stay warm. So it's quite a change.
Yeah. It's a massive change.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful reality that we live in, with all these beautiful trees and plants and humans and animals and birds and reptiles and mountains and oceans and all kinds of amazing things. But in the moment of birth, that may be a little overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. And overwhelming is a great way to describe what's happening on the planet right now.
Yeah. But as we proceed further into this new earth, I just think that it can be a wonderful adventure and a wonderful opportunity, and things could be so much better than they are for many people in the old paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Everything is changing. And you can see how, as we're talking about it, the perspective actually is a huge deal. It's like, what stories are you choosing to tell yourself about your life and the nature of reality? And do those stories help uplift you and empower you, or do they separate you and disempower you? You know, so this idea of the new earth, you know, my ultimate belief is that anything is possible and anything is real, and that we create through our belief system. And so if that's true, then choosing the stories and ideas that we want to nourish to help bring in the reality that we want. Yeah, so that's a big part of the new earth as well.
You're listening to the Intuitive Leadership Mastery Podcast. Get detailed show notes on today's episode together with your free What Would It Take Business Intuition Guide at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. And now back to today's show.
I just want to come back to the resistance that people have, and we'll talk more about, well, is everyone going to the new earth later? But I do notice in myself and in others that sometimes this whole shift becomes too much, and I want to take some kind of addiction drug, whether that's coffee or caffeine or alcohol or illegal drugs. Or I want to distract myself by watching videos on YouTube, or going out, you know, partying, or eating food obsessively, or having sex obsessively, or shopping obsessively. You know, nothing wrong with any of these things, but if they become an addiction and a way to block out feelings and what's going on, you know, it can become an issue. And I think there are billions of people on the planet currently resisting this shift.
Yeah.
And I think beyond that, I think nearly everyone at some point during the day might find it all too much and resort to some way to block out the pain of the birth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, you know, I really work with people and encourage people to develop some healthy habits right now, some really simple things that can help balance the energies, that can help us harmonize, that can help us get into our centers and calm ourselves through the overwhelm, because it is huge. We're seeing things like, again, it's an unprecedented shift in human consciousness. This has never happened before as long as humans have existed on Earth. I like to joke about it, but it's actually like we are evolving at the fastest.
At least not it hasn't happened in recorded history or unknown history, is what I'd say. Whether this happened before is a little hard to tell, because my belief is human history goes back a lot further than 10,000 years, which is about how far historians managed to get back. And,
yeah, for sure.
You know, if you look into Atlantis or Lemuria, perhaps they had a new Earth thing going on, and then unfortunately that ended for whatever reason. So, and you know, I'm also open to the possibility. You know, humans are not the only, you know, highly conscious and intuitive spiritual being in the universe. You know, I think there are other beings who, you know, may already be in this vibration. And possibly are here right now trying to, you know, here to help us, whether you call them angels or aliens or spirits or, you know, spirit guides or whatever. So,
yeah. Great points. Yeah. I believe in all those things. And where I'm coming from is from this deep knowing inside of myself. Like all of this is beyond logic. You know, you can start to logic the pieces and see the evidence, but But for me, what I feel is that this is an unprecedented time for the human species in terms of a fast quantum leap. And the thing that I feel right now is that we're evolving at the maximum velocity that we can withhold, right? And so going back to this idea that we need some things to help us cope, to process this. So there's some really simple things that are remedies for the overwhelm. One of them is getting in nature, spending time in nature, laying on the earth, walking through the trees. Even just a few minutes is going to help when you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed or disoriented. Also, it's really important for us to spend time in being quiet, just spending some time without checking our phones, without the media on, without a conversation, without music even in the background, spending time in silence. And another piece that is key right now, seems like a luxury in our modern societies, especially as entrepreneurs, is rest. So I really often prescribe the practices of restorative yoga or yoga nidra or guided relaxation, and helping our nervous systems and our bodies keep up with all of this, the intensity on the planet right now.
Those are great suggestions, and we'll add more to them at the end of the episode. I also think there's when people are in pain, some healers suggest if you're pain, you should fully feel the pain so it can move through you and pass through. And I think that's a good suggestion for any pain we experience in this. If you have the skills to be able to do that. And for a lot of people, they just want to ignore the pain. They want to cover it up, as we mentioned earlier, but also numb it out. And there's something I've written and talked about a lot, which is cold depression, which is kind of a yogic term, saying that as a society, many people are just numbed out. They're not experiencing joy. They're not really fully alive as they could be. And I think that's that's getting worse. I mean, and I'm saying that because I see people dissatisfied. There's this great resignation thing with jobs where people say they want to change their job this year. And I think that's because they just don't feel, soul satisfied in the work they're doing.
Yeah.
Or on the entrepreneurial level, they're just not happy with their business. They talk about selling their business because they're not happy with it at a deeper level. So I think there's lots of facets to this change. And the other indicator to me that there's something going on is the number of people taking addictive drugs or overdosing, like on fentanyl. I think in the United States last year, 100,000 people died of fentanyl overdoses. It's just an incredible number. And in some sense, unnecessary. If they could connect to this new earth, they had some support to move through the pains and shift their life, they wouldn't have to kill themselves slowly with drugs or whatever method they're using.
Yeah. And Michaela, this is why one of the reasons I feel so passionate about sharing this information is that most of our suffering could shift if we just had a different perspective. So imagine instead of some really difficult emotional or physical pain or situation, instead of meeting that and saying, this is hurting me, right? This is my enemy. What if we met it instead and said, okay, this is somehow designed to help me. How I always like the game that I play with reality that has changed everything in my life is I believe that everything comes from one source and that I'm an expression of that source. And I believe also that everything is part of a design that is designed to evolve, to help us remember that we are love. Insert your own vocabulary there. But so how I play this game is I say, this, whatever it is, this pain, this emotional situation, this loss, this is designed by me, for my own awakening of consciousness, by which I mean, what do I mean by awakening of consciousness? For me to remember that I'm a divine and infinite soul that came here to learn. And what did I come to learn? To remember that all is one. Right? So just playing the game, in other words, saying, how is this designed to help me? Designed by me, for my own awakening of consciousness. And what if we could start to apply that to all our pain? It doesn't make the challenge or the illness necessarily go away. Sometimes it does, but it changes our whole experience. We can meet it with gratitude and curiosity and openness and say, wow, how could me missing the bus right now? How could me losing all of this money? How could me this, whatever it might be, how could this be designed to help me? How could this be an opportunity, right? And it changes everything. And so getting these uplifting perspectives out into the collective are essential at this time, right?
I think those are beautiful perspectives to have: gratitude, openness, curiosity. Curiosity is something we can usually apply in the moment that the challenge is happening. Just be open to it instead of labeling it as bad, negative. Why am I suffering this terrible torment? Instead of being curious, this is interesting. How interesting? And I know in some of my own energy healing work, just looking at a pattern or an event through interest and shining that light of interest and curiosity onto the energy of it often is enough to shift it and change it.
Yeah, and this is good news,
certainly,
right? Just the awareness.
Yeah, just the awareness, just being open to that. And then gratitude. Often people are able to look back into their past and say, oh, when I was fired from that job and it was so terrible at the time, wow, that was the greatest gift, because I would never have started my own business if I hadn't been fired, or I would never have moved cities and met the love of my life, or whatever the thing that came out of that situation that you can be grateful for now. Or if I hadn't had that cancer, I'd never have changed my lifestyle to be more healthy and then healed it and have a happier and healthier life. Or got divorced, or, whatever the thing was that it encouraged them to do. So, but I think what you're saying is it's possible to get into that gratitude space much, much quicker. You don't have to wait decades to look back to feel that gratitude. You can do it, really soon, the same day, or maybe in the moment when you get really good at this.
Yeah, absolutely. It is certainly a practice, though. It's a practice. It's a retraining our consciousness, but you're right. The curiosity is the thing that's easiest. For me, also this idea that, this is interesting, because I desire an interesting experience of my life, right? So something interesting happens, like I don't have to label it, like you said, good or bad. And that's something I can do right away. And then, cultivating the gratitude is part of a practice.
Now, I am going to say at this point that in our current earth, we have a lot of organizations and people who are invested in labeling and judging and dividing people. And the media is both social media and, newspapers, TV, things, and many other organizations really focus on labeling and judging and like, this is bad, this is good. And so I'm just saying to people, maybe reduce your diet of media while you're going through this, because that's another way to support yourself in this shift. I can guarantee you I used to be obsessively reading the Washington Post when I lived in Washington, D.C. metro area, from cover to cover every day. And I went on a cold turkey. I'm not going to touch the newspaper. It was very hard for the first few days. And I needed support of a coach and some alternative things to do with my hands during that time. But what I found out is, first of all, my mind was not being filled with all this negativity and judgment. And secondly, anything really important happen in the world, I'd find out. People would be talking about it, or it would appear, if it was going to affect me personally, I'd become aware of it. It isn't, this obsession with news is not required, in my view.
Yeah. For sure. I have a background in journalism, right? So I am very trained to believe that to be a good citizen, you need to be informed with the news. And at a certain point, as I started to go deeper into my spiritual work, I learned that I could not watch the news. I had to disengage from the news and from other media like that. And it has had a tremendously positive effect on my life. So at least being aware of the effect that it has and kind of limiting your intake can be really helpful. Also picking and choosing what sources of, where you're getting your information from can be really helpful. And I want to address this idea of there's a whole bunch of structures that are upholding separation, right? because you can see even within ourselves, we're resistant to change, even if that change is going to be positive. And you can see that in the collective. The collective is also resistant to change. We don't want the old systems to fall away because we don't know what the new system looks like. It's an unknown, and we have to take this risk. We have to follow our hearts and our deep intuition to know that it's something that's helpful to us, right? But one of the deepest insights that I received at the beginning of the COVID shutdown was that there is no other, and that we need to stop acting as if there's an other all the time, right? Even in the spiritual communities, we do a lot of us and them, right? And so starting to see, again, just like we do with the pain or the challenge, seeing everyone around us is also trying to help our evolution, even if it looks like they're our enemy, or even if it looks like they're in opposition to us. So meeting everything with this idea that this is designed by me, for me, for my own awakening of consciousness.
I think that's a great perspective. And I just want to emphasize on the, media diet. I personally find video is a very strong format to consume news in. It can be very emotional. It can be upsetting. It can be traumatizing. I can get PTSD from watching violent videos. And there's a phrase in journalism, I'm sure you've heard this: if it bleeds, it leads. In other words, if it's violent, if it's upsetting, if it's going to stir people's emotions up of anger or fear, then that's what gets put on the headlines on the front page or at the beginning of the news story. And the stories that are heartwarming and like, oh, humanity's really got it together and 99% of people are doing really well this year, they don't make it to the front page. They may not even make it to page 31, Yeah. So, you may have to select things. And I find reading stuff is less upsetting generally. If I need to find out what's going on, I prefer to read it than watch video if possible. Or hear it from someone else who's actually been, seen it directly as a great way to do it. And just to go off on a slight tangent, the local people here in Cusco are the Quechua tribe, which is a tribe of maybe 8 million people currently. And in the Quechua language, they actually have a grammatical difference between, when you're telling something, this happened, the house fell down. Did you personally see it? That's one grammatical ending in the verb structure. Did a friend of yours see it and they told you? That's another one. Or is it just hearsay and you heard somewhere on the grapevine that the house fell down? And they have different grammatical structures for the truth level of it, which I thought was quite entertaining. And I'm not learning Quechua because for that reason that the grammar is really quite complex and the tonality, it sounds like Chinese to me. Although I realize it's a separate language. But I just thought that was interesting that they actually make that distinction, just like French or Spanish distinguish between male or female verbs, but they're distinguishing levels of truth, which.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? I love it.
And just applying that back to TV news, video news, and newspapers and whatever. I haven't studied journalism, Niki, but I have studied the dark arts of public relations and how to get, if you're a company and you want to get your product or service covered, how do you manipulate the press in order to cover it? Which sounds a bit dark and naughty. And there's a book I'll put in the show notes whose name I'm forgetting right now. But the point I want to make is if you look objectively at a newspaper, 90% of it is placed. It's either placed by companies trying to promote something, buy our, you're not good enough unless you get a new car, or you're not good enough unless you get this drug, or whatever the thing is. Or it's government departments trying to push their latest, initiative, right? And so they need to stir up the fear or the anger in order to get their initiative have support. And when I've looked at a newspaper and just circled, okay, yeah, this is from PR, this is from PR, 90% of the stuff is from PR. And then there's a few articles like earthquake happened. Okay, that's actual factual. And then the other thing that happens a lot in news that I became aware of is a lot of it is not actual news. A lot of it's like opinion about what might happen in the future, or this is their thoughts on, their judgment on something that has happened and their theory on what it's about. So I'm just saying a lot of news is not really news. It's more opinion, judgment, or manipulation. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I love that, Michaela. And then applying this idea that I'm talking about, designed by me, for my own awakening of consciousness. Okay. So we can see that there's some corporation that wants you to act in a certain way. And so they endorse the news in a certain way. And here's our big chance, is like seeing, how is this designed for my own evolution? And a lot of times right now, what's being reflected to us is what we don't want. What doesn't resonate with us. We don't want to feel this economic pressure. We don't want to run the rat race. We don't want to feel stressed. We don't want to feel unhappy. And so a lot of what's happening in our environment and inside of us as individuals is really showing us what we don't want, so that we can get the momentum and clarity to decide what we do want. And, as we're talking about the new earth, everything has to do with choice. And so we need to get really clear on what we don't want and on what we do want in order to choose and have an empowered and aligned choice in our lives.
Yeah. I mean, to me, one of the things I realized is consciousness in some sense equals awareness plus choice. First, you have to become aware of the options and what's going on, because without that, how can you make a good choice? And then secondly, you can't just be aware. You can't just be this monk in a cave being aware that your business could go one way or another. You actually need to make some choices and take some actions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful.
Well, we've really dug into that. I do want to mention one other thing here, that for me, this new earth thing doesn't mean the old earth is going away. There's still going to be whatever we call 3D reality here, but it's like an overlay. It's like putting on these rose-colored glasses. I actually wear them for blue light, but now everything's happier, right? And yeah, I can see the same houses and trees, and I meet the same people, but I have a different perspective on it. And is that your feeling on the new earth, that it's kind of a way of looking at things, and it can coexist with the old paradigm?
Exactly. So
you can have two people in the same situation, one in the new earth, one in the old earth.
Yeah, absolutely. And how my feeling of the rose-colored glasses is it's an internal experience. It's a feeling inside of ourselves. And, the new earth is already here. And that's why we're going in and out of it, a lot of us, right? We can feel the old stuff, and that feels heavy and full of suffering. We can feel the new way, which feels expansive and uplifting and full of curiosity and opportunity, right? So for sure, I feel certain, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, are the systems going to crumble? Are we going to have Armageddon? What's the situation? Is going to be this big sci-fi thing? And that's not my belief. What I really believe is that the new earth frequency is coming through each of our internal experience to get infused into the system. And it will therefore change the entire system. There will be massive changes as a result, but it's coming through individual humans, like them putting on their rose-colored glasses, or them having an opening inside of themselves, that one day to the next, we start seeing things with a new perspective.
So the good news there is I don't need to buy a ticket to go to the new earth. I don't need to do, it's there at any moment. I can shift my perspectives, I can shift my vibration. And I just want to say, when you said feels expansive, I think that's a good kind of new earthometer to know, am I in the new earth right now? Do I feel expansive? Do I feel joyful? Do I feel love? Or do I feel fear and contracted and, compressed and suppressed, enslaved, even, to take it to a radical level? So, and it can shift through the day or a different day. One day I might be, I get out of the bed on the right side, as they used to say, and the day goes wonderfully and I meet all the right people and all the things go well. And other days, maybe that's not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And it requires some tools around it to remind ourselves, right? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're on mute still, Michaela.
I muted myself.
There you go.
So we've got a bit more time, in the show. Maybe you could just tell a little story that I think is quite inspiring about, how you came to found Healing House, even though the evidence in the 3D world wasn't that inspiring.
Yeah, beautiful, Michaela. Thanks. Yeah, I've been here in Cusco for 13 years. And so many people over the years ask me, what was your vision for Healing House? How are you proactive and created this, what's now become kind of institution here in a uplifting way in the city, and so many people around the world know it. And the funny thing is I didn't have a vision. So my story is basically I was going through a big change in life. That all of us have these radical moments of the rug getting pulled out from underneath of us, right? That was a catalyst for me to start to become more energetically sensitive. But what it really did in that energetic sensitivity was it helped me start to listen to my own inner wisdom. I call it the heart's wisdom. You could call it your inner wisdom. You could call it your intuition. And something inside of me said, go south. And at this point, I was living in northern New Jersey. Go south. There's a lot of south to cover, but I knew it meant Central or South America. And so this experience of mine of starting to listen to that inner heart's wisdom and follow it really at all costs was what led me to follow this little kind of trail of breadcrumbs, really, go south. Ended up in Cusco, stay here longer. Eventually, what started to happen was a message came through, get a room where you can host Reiki and meditation and some of the healing arts. And that led me to find a house and have the guts to rent the house, even though that didn't make any economic sense for me at that point. And
how little economic sense did it make? How much money do you have in your pocket? And how much was the rent at the time?
I can't remember exactly what I had.
Did you have enough money to pay the rent?
I had enough money to pay the rent. Here was my situation. I had some school loans and things coming out of my account in the United States, and I had a couple grand left in there. But I was determined not to touch it. And so by this point, my husband and I we had met. He's now my husband. At that point, he was my boyfriend, and we started playing music together in Cusco. And we were making between 30 and 60 soles a gig per person.
What's that in dollars?
So 30 soles.
$10, $15.
Yeah.
$10 or $15.
$10 or $15.
A night.
Per night. Yeah. So it's not a lot of money. And we were counting change. We had just enough money to pay for the rent and the deposit, which I don't remember what it was back then. I think it was 400 US or something at that time. So we needed $800, and it was all the money that we had together. And so something inside just said, get this house. And so we got the house, and people started to come. People started to ring the doorbell asking for Reiki and meditation before we even had a sign outside. And so all of these experiences of these breadcrumbs that led to magic unfolding really became the mission for Healing House and Pachananda, which is to give people practices that help them get into their centers. It could be yoga, it could be meditation, it could be nature walks. So provide these practices to help people get present and centered so that they can listen to that voice inside of them. Because really, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for that clear pathway, that clarity, that assurance inside of us that knows, hey, even though this doesn't make any sense, I'm going to do it anyway. And so I've lived my life like that for the past, maybe 14 years. One of my students has asked, is it always right? And the answer is, yeah, it's always right. That feeling inside of your heart's wisdom is always right. And sometimes our mind makes a whole big story around it, right? That says, ooh, this and this and this is going to unfold. And then we end up disappointed because our minds have created a story, but our heart is never misleading us, right? It can lead into challenges. It can lead into disappointments, but it's taking us on our soul's path. It's this compass, right? And so the same thing happened up here, where I had this heart wisdom message that said it would go to the bank and get a loan. And I'm a yoga teacher. My husband's a musician. There's no way we can get a loan. We had no evidence of income. And some miracle of the universe happened where we got a pre-approved loan. Another miracle happened where we found the land of Pachananda at a really discounted rate and just flowed together to buy this beautiful land where we've built our retreat center and home now. And it was a big risk. It's the biggest risk I've ever taken, And so that really goes into what Michaela teaches about intuitive leadership, is for me, everything about how I live my life and how I run my business is in an intuitive way. And sometimes it's radical, but it's always fruitful. It always takes me where I need to go. But you have to be willing to take some risks, So that's my story. That's how I ended up here. And that's what we continue to do to help people get into that heart's wisdom here.
That is so inspiring. And I just want to add in a little thing, having rented this house, the second month's rent was due and you didn't have the money for it, but magically, these friends turned up to give a Reiki workshop, I think, or some such thing. And you suddenly had the money.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was in the morning and I turned to my then partner, now husband, and said, we don't have money to pay the rent. And then my phone rang. And it was someone's, hey,
wow.
I got your number and I would like to start Reiki training. Do you think we could start it right away? And I was like, okay. And that became my big lesson that said, you know what, if I am just present and listening, that the universe is going to show up to support this project in the way that it is necessary. So yeah, that's been the practice.
So I'm curious, I got this question from someone who was very interested in this topic of the new earth, and she is very into this, raising her vibration and all the things we've discussed, but her family and boyfriend and kids, they don't get it. So what would you recommend for, how, she doesn't want to just kick them out of the house, right?
Yeah.
But how should she deal with these people who don't yet? Hopefully they're going to get it in the future, but they don't get it right now.
Yeah.
Should she be trying to convert them? Should she be, going along with their old paradigm of fear and lack? What would you suggest?
Well, this is such a hot topic through the Healing House. People come and have big transformation. Then they say, but my family or my friends or my spouse, they aren't into it. What do I do? And the only thing that you can change is inside of yourself. And you'll see a miracle start to happen. If you start to create a different vibration inside of yourself, everyone around you and your environment will be affected. And this is how the new earth is born, right? It's through ourselves in small ways every day. I have this joke that no one is immune to the frequency of the new earth, that people are awakening that had no context or even conscious desire to start to become more sensitive and more connected. And so also part of that is not assuming that other people aren't also evolving. So there's that piece that can be really helpful. I've had a lot of times over the years where, I feel like I've gone through so much radical transformation and I've got weirder and weirder and more woohoo. And I'm going to meet with somebody I haven't seen for 15 years. And I assume that they can't meet me there. And lots of times people surprise me. So just being open to that. Another thing about that topic, that at the very beginning of COVID, I said, so what's required now for this new earth to start to come in? And the answer that came through my own intuitive wisdom was, one person getting present with one other person. And that was the beauty of the lockdowns, right? We did a lot of, numbing out and all of that, but also a lot of people connected. I don't know about you guys, but I ended up connecting not only with my family, who I was in lockdown with in a deeper way, but also I connected with old friends because everyone was stuck at home. And so we did Zoom calls and we had heart-to-heart conversations. And so there was a deep connection that happened. And then the last thing that I would say that I've learned so much about this evolution of consciousness thing is that the biggest and most important pieces of the puzzle are really accessible to everyone. They don't require even a belief in the new earth or anything like this. They don't require a belief in God. So the biggest pieces that are creating the change are things like kindness. One human being kind to another human. That requires presence, which is bringing it in, and it creates an opening, So we can get all woo-woo and new agey and talking about all the stuff, but when it really comes to the massive change that's happening on the planet, the fundamental pieces of love and kindness are accessible to all beings. Gratitude is another example. So for people who aren't going to engage with us in a conversation that sounds too new agey or woo-woo, we can meet them in gratitude. We can meet them in kindness and trust that that's enough, right? So those two things, meeting them in those very human ways. And the other piece is taking responsibility for your own inner landscape and trusting that that's going to affect those around you without doing it. We're not doing the inner changes in order that our husband starts reading the spiritual books, right? We're doing it for ourselves, but it does have an effect on everything around us. Does that make sense, Michaela?
Absolutely. And just coming back to that reframe that everything in our life is there to help us grow and learn. It may be that family, I believe we incarnate into families and we pick our parents and siblings. Whether or not you believe that, you can certainly take the attitude of these family members or friends to be a possible, growth and learning thing. And, some people are on the, small hill learning course. Other people are going for climbing Mount Everest. And some people incarnate with family members who, are also kind and supportive, and others have on a spiritual level, not necessarily on a conscious level, but pick someone who's a real dickhead and is going to really provide, going to strengthen your muscles of kindness and boundaries and gratitude. So the other thing I would add into that, as I shift my frequency, what I find is, yes, it does help inspire others or helps them shift their frequency. It also is the case that some people just, gently leave my reality, and they just don't vibrate. I mean, the way I think of it is all the billions of humans on the planet, it's like we're all walking across an enormous football pitch. It's really enormous. And some people are going from south to north, and some people from southwest to northwest and east to west. And if you're with other family members and you're both walking north parallel, you stay together. But you may come across people in your life, you're going in this direction vertically and they're going at a slight angle, and you drift apart. And that is very common in friendships or romantic relationships, that people just grow in different directions, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So, maybe shifting the expectation that, oh my goodness, you're supposed to stay with these friends for, 70 years or however many years you and they live, or you're supposed to stick with family members no matter how irritating they are at Thanksgiving, or whatever. Maybe that's not true. Maybe there's family of choice as well and friends of choice. And just because you went to the same grade school together doesn't mean you're going to resonate with this person forever. So just a thought.
Yeah, beautiful.
And when I say they shift away, that may mean several things. It may mean you just don't spend as much time. You only see them occasionally. It may mean that they totally, they get a different job and you just don't hang out together. It might mean, in my case, I stopped drinking alcohol 17 years ago, and some of the friends continued, but others who I was just friends with to go get wasted with didn't really resonate so much anymore. It wasn't a thing. Or the other way people leave our reality is they die, and some people can't handle the birthing pain. Or the way I look at it, when they incarnated, they bought a ticket to Act 1 of the play of the New Earth, but they didn't buy tickets to Act 2 and Act 3, and they're just leaving the planet because they did, they've done their bit, they played their role, as Shakespeare says, whatever that quote is, all the world's a stage and men or humans are only players. I think we do all play parts in our own growth things, but when our part is over, not all characters in a play stay in the whole effing play for the whole time, right? Some people walk on and walk off, others are there for longer. And I don't have to get upset just because someone, I don't have to create a whole story that, oh, they're rejecting me or I'm a bad person or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's just that was the role they had in my reality and me in theirs.
Yeah, this is where the heart's wisdom is really helpful. Get centered, trust yourself, know how to show up. Mm-hmm.
Now, that brings me to a question here. Do all humans move to the new Earth? What do you think?
Well, I keep saying no one's immune to the new Earth, and that there's possibility for everyone to awaken to this higher harmony. And the truth is, I don't know. I don't know. I think that it's available to everyone. And that I find it, I mean, if I can take my own personal experience, I feel like I really have to choose it. I feel like there's a choice. And not everyone has to have that vocabulary of the new earth, right? Some place that we can all meet on common ground is basically, as Michaela said earlier, most people are highly unsatisfied with their lives. And that is really uncomfortable. And that's something we can almost all agree upon, right? We're unsatisfied with our experience of life. And so making the choices and taking action, taking responsibility to make the changes in our lives. So I feel like it's available to everyone. It certainly seems like there's some will involved, and for myself, I find myself needing to choose this new way of thinking and being moment by moment. So yeah, what do you think, Michaela?
I think billions of people are going to leave. I really do. There's 7 or 8 billion people on the planet. I could easily see a third of them this isn't their thing. They love the old paradigm of fear and struggle and 3D stuff and not so much spiritual stuff. And it's just the birthing pain is just too much. And we all spiritual beings, humans included, have free will, and their free will at a soul level is no, they're not going to do this. That's my personal.
Yeah.
And it's sad. I have friends who've died in the last year, and they had practical reasons they died, whether it was cancer or accidents or heart attacks or whatever. And there's this new thing going around in the media, SAD, sudden adult death syndrome. It's a bit like SID, which was sudden infant death syndrome. And the way I've seen that in the mainstream media, they say, oh, this is a mystery. Why are so many people dying for unknown reasons? And I won't dig into what I think the reasons are, but clearly there are people leaving. And it's a lot more leaving. The excess death statistics for young people, they're up, depending on the country, anywhere from 20 to 100% more deaths of young people under 60. We're not talking people who are old age, talking people in the prime of their life or in their youth, and they're just leaving.
Yeah.
And, I don't like seeing friends suffer or die, but if that's their sole choice, then, it's not for me they've got their own free will. And I can't remember the name of this book, and I'm not going to dig it up for the show notes, but I read this really, a parent of a heroin addict, and their child, who they love dearly, just kept going back to heroin. And they tried to help him. Eventually, they just had to say, look, you want to keep taking heroin? I'm sorry, we've got some boundaries here. Can't let you steal money from us, or whatever they were getting up to. And that was a very hard thing for them to do, to, let go and let the person, they did the best they could to help this person change. And, coming back to the friends and family, yeah, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, and maybe you can sit next to the horse and you drink some water, and maybe the horse will get the idea that perhaps it will help their thirst or their pain of the old earth to drink some water too. But if the horse is stubborn and it don't want to drink water, even when it's right in front of it, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I had some teaching a long time ago around this subject where I felt like if I kept going on my spiritual path, I was going to have to leave several loved ones kind of behind, or we were no longer going to have a relationship anymore. And in my case, and in the case of many people that I've worked with, what I found was sometimes the relationships fall away, but sometimes also as we go farther on our spiritual path and we move more into presence and love inside of ourselves, my experience was that the people I thought I wasn't going to have a relationship with anymore, I actually ended up developing a deeper relationship. It wasn't right away, but it was because I was able to step into a deeper place of love. And through that, I had a big epiphany. Up until that point, I was always saying, I was like preaching the yoga and the Reiki and the whatever. And I thought, this is the right way. This is the right way. And I realized that it was my right way. And I realized that it wasn't everyone's way, and that their way, if it's not resonating with them, my way's not resonating with them, they have their own way. Their way is their right way. But I had to think my way was the right way, or I wouldn't have risked going that way. Right. So it helped me just have a lot of acceptance for people's paths. And again, focusing on my own vibration and my own life. And I do a lot of outreach and teaching, right? But trusting that the people who resonate with those teachings will show up, and that people who don't won't, and that is actually good, right? So it helped me have a lot of balance and acceptance in my life around that point. And then this piece of people leaving, I just want to add in a little possibility for some of the souls who are leaving, because I have been feeling this too, is maybe some of them need a new body to come back into Earth. So they're leaving and they're going to come back and be born into the new frequency. Certainly not the case for everyone, right? But I have had that kind of hit with a couple of instances of people being like, okay, I see you need a new suit to get back into Earth and help us bring in the new age. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, sometimes people, the way I feel with healing things, our body parts, we may have an ache in our back or whatever. And it's the body like tapping us on the shoulder and saying, hey, Michaela, time to wake up. You need to have this realization, whatever it is. And I like to send love to or smile at my body parts and listen to any messages they have. And then the pain usually, or the illness goes away. But other times, some people, the body part taps them on the shoulder and they ignore it. It's like you've got a toddler in the house and you're ignoring them. They're like, mommy, I need to go to the bathroom. And you just ignore it, because you're busy with someone else. And then it gets more urgent, and the body part like, hey. And then they kind of pick up a 2x4 and whack you over the head with it. And like, hey, Michaela, wake up. You need to do something about this. And often that will show up as a severe illness. Like, you have to go and get surgery for, you've got cancer or whatever. And I had a life partner who had cancer. I've known a lot about that, and I've studied a lot. And a lot of people who get cancer have what's called a spontaneous remission. What that means is the medical Western doctors have no effing idea how they heal. They just magically healed. And often what occurs for those people is they make a radical shift in their life, whatever that might mean. They maybe quit that job that was soul destroying, or they had a good deep talk with their life partner and shifted the relationship, or they got divorced, or they moved to a new town, or whatever the thing was, or they changed their health. They looked after their health better. Made it a priority. They didn't, drain themselves at the cost of their own health. And so what I'm saying is some people may leave, die. Some people may go through a more extreme experience. And I was watching a great video that I'll put into the comments. That is this girl, she was in Austin University there studying journalism, in fact. And she was really depressed and suicidal. She kind of committed to do a 10K run to kind of keep her life together. And then she had a car accident and broke her back in 3 places. And she had an out-of-body experience. She had a near-death experience. She actually went, out of her body. She saw what her stepfather was doing, which was something she wouldn't have known. He did something he didn't do. But she was able to report what he did. And she had experiences with connecting with the light or God or whatever you want to call it. And she had a choice. Should I go back into my body, or should I, leave? And she chose to go back, and she totally changed her life direction. She's now a teacher, not a journalist. Anyway, you can watch the video later. It's quite inspiring. But what I'm trying to say is there are many ways people can shift. And some people buy a ticket to the merry-go-round and it's very gentle. Other people like the death-defying roller coaster that goes up and looks like it's going to crash and die, and then they escape. Yeah. And other people do actually crash and die. So it's all okay. I know we're nearly up against the time barrier, and we've been talking a wonderful conversation. Can you give some, if there's one thing that someone wants to incorporate this into their business and life, what would you say they should take away from this? What would you like them to take away?
I mean, the one thing that I feel like is the game changer is that through choice, we create our reality, especially now with this new earth frequency, right? So the life you desire is here already. The business experience you desire is here already. It takes some micro practices of remembering and choosing, and that the life that you want to create it's coming in moment by moment on how you show up in your day-to-day grind, moment by moment, and to not underestimate the power, this exponential power of the choices we're making right now and the priorities, how we're shifting priorities, right? So really evaluating moment by moment, pausing and saying, does this move me towards the life and that I desire? Does this move me towards the experience of my business that I desire? Or does it keep me in the old limited form, right? And that our choices are more empowered than ever before, right? So just that pause and ask and trusting that you can bring in great change in very small ways.
And that change might look like taking a few deep breaths before you work on whatever the task is, or make that sales call or whatever, or taking a little nap or a walk around the block or whatever the micro decision is. Or it might mean smiling, that's always a great energy shift.
Yeah, I've got a couple practices I'll give you before we leave.
Yeah, please do.
So the big thing is choice, right? So we have to remember what we're choosing. What is it? So remember, we're getting clear on what we don't want so we can get clear on what we do want and choosing it, but remembering to choose. So having some reminders around your environment can be really helpful, maybe on your screensaver or on your mirror, reminding you of what you choose, how you're choosing to experience your life. So for example, one of my big reprogrammings is that I have plenty of time and energy. So I can put that on my mirror. I have plenty of time and energy, right? Another thing I like to call micro practices, which is some small act that you do. Hopefully first thing in the morning or really close to first thing in the morning, and then potentially throughout the day. Some very small programmed act that helps you get into the frequency and the experience and the feeling of the life that you want. So here's a great example. Something I do in the morning is I have some tuning forks. They're like little bells. So you could use a bell, you could use anything at all, but it's any act. So I take it, I make the sound, and I remember how I want to feel, and I choose the feeling. I light up inside with gratitude and appreciation. I choose feeling expansive over contraction, however you want to anchor that in for yourself. But taking one small physical action and supercharging it with the feeling and doing it throughout your day, it can be a total game changer. Yeah. And another piece that I want to just add in that can be really, really helpful right now as we're talking about relationships is being in community with other people who share your vision, being in community, developing friendships, reaching out to people that are helping uplift you and help bring out this vision for your life that you desire. So these micro practices, choosing the frequency you want and being around people that share that vision are some key pieces during these really interesting times on Earth.
Those are great tips, Niki. And I just want, for entrepreneurs listening, I just want to expand that. You could create a spiritual group of other entrepreneurs who feel in a similar way, but you also could select staff to work for your business that share that vision and that energy and attitude, and ditto with the clients. You can fire the clients that aren't a good energetic fit, who are a pain in the butt or irritating to you, or you could set some boundaries and tell them, if you want to stay working with me, you've got to shift. And some of them may shift, some of them may not. And then when you're attracting ideal clients to you in the future, you look, this is the energy, the attitude I want them to have, as well as the other practical characteristics. Yeah. So it's possible that your own company could be this community.
Yeah, I love that.
And same with vendors as well. Right? So cool. If people want to find you online, Niki, what are the best ways to do that?
Michaela, I need to say one more thing. You just totally inspired. Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. It's what Michaela is just saying about making these choices. So the new earth energy is about putting the life that you love and desire first, even within the context of your business, and taking some risks to trust that if you're honoring your own well-being and joy, that the abundance is going to come, that everything you need to uphold the vision for your life is going to come. And so sometimes it's taking a risk, like firing a client. And that seems like an old paradigm. We need all the clients, even if they're a pain in the butt, right? But in the new paradigm, what we're doing is we're choosing. And so through a decision by firing a client who doesn't resonate with you, what you're doing is you're making space for the life that you really desire. And so this model that I've been practicing that I'll leave you guys with is trusting. I believe in a reality in which if I am thriving and I'm in my joy and I'm loving my life, my business will also thrive. I attract more students and clients when I'm feeling really good and I'm enjoying my life. And so this is the new paradigm. This is the new earth. And it's not about burning the candle at both ends. I could spend 25 hours doing Instagram stuff today, but if I'm not vibrating in this expansive joy, then I'm not getting the abundance and I'm not generating the clients. And so this is the new earth, and taking a risk to reprioritize your life, So thanks for that last little bit. I just wanted to get that in there. It's one of the things I feel most passionate about.
Yeah. And for anyone listening who's never fired a client, that doesn't mean you're mean to them. Firing sounds like a mean thing to do, but really you're just saying, look, this isn't resonating. Here's my boundaries. Here's it's not you, it's me who's changed. It's like one of those relationship breakup conversations, right? And then if you do it kindly, if they're open to it, you like, well, look, we're not a fit, but here's someone else I can refer you to who could be a better fit. Obviously, you talk to that person to make sure they really are a better fit for this kind of person, because maybe they're young in their business and they're hungry for clients and they'll put up with more BS, or they just have a better personality that can deal with that kind of person better, And so those are some tips for firing clients. And some people look at their client list every year and they just, I have a spreadsheet where I like, okay, here are the different characteristics I'm looking for in a client that makes them ideal, and I score them. And the ones at the bottom are the ones to look at, hey, maybe they need to be let go. So, and it's good to do that, because by creating energetic space in our business, that now gives space for new clients to come in that are ideal. Anyway, back to how people can find Niki Coate and Pachananda and Healing House online. What are the best ways to do that?
Okay, so our website is a great way. It's pachanandacusco.com. I'll spell it. Pacha, P-A-C-H-A, Nanda, N-A-N-D-A, Pachananda, Cusco, C-U-S-C-O.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, Healing House and Pachananda. So you can check it out in the notes. And I'm so grateful. Please reach out. I'd love to hear from all of you. I'm really grateful for this space and this beautiful conversation today, Michaela.
You're so welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Get detailed show notes on today's episode together with your free What Would It Take Business Intuition Guide at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. Create a fabulous and profitable day. What would it take?